So to give you all a bit of an intro, I'm Nat, and we've also got Zoe here. We run Divergent Thinking. We're a youth social action project organisation which aims to teach young people to communicate effectively from a different perspective and point of view. This course is called Off Beat Activism, and it's about how can we make change in our society from a non-conventional way. That leads me on to our host today, our facilitator, Zahrah. Zahrah is honestly one of the best social action warriors I know, has worked in the industry for numerous years, is a YouTuber, writer, and activist. So you're in very, very capable hands. And without further delay, I'll pass it over to you, Zahrah.
Thanks, Nat. Hopefully everyone can hear me really clearly. Such a nice introduction, Nat. Thank you so much. So I'm Zahrah, and I'm here today to talk about Social Action 101. So basically the need to know things when you are starting off a social action project. I've kind of started from just the roots of what makes a really good social action campaign. Hopefully it is useful to you. Hopefully it doesn't confuse anybody. Hopefully it adds value in some way. We are going to have, it's going to be quite interactive, so please do, drop things into the chat every now and again, and please do, ask any questions at the end if you feel that you need to. So I'm just going to share my screen with you. Hopefully it shares the right stuff. Hopefully everyone can see my screen. Can I get a thumbs up if you can see my screen? Brilliant, perfect. Okay, so let's kind of get the chat up, get ready. Okay, so as Nat mentioned, my name's Zahrah, and I've worked in the kind of charity sector for a long time. And what I want to kind of just start off with is what I hope to kind of cover in today's session. So I'm going to talk a little bit about me and my background very quickly. Kind of what social injustice is, and I guess, what we kind of mean when we say social injustice. What is social action? And I hope we can kind of come up together with what social action kind of means. There's a very, social action is it's something that's not quite tangible, but if you know what it is, you know what it is. That makes sense. I'm going to show you some really great examples from when I worked at Go Think Big, because I worked quite closely on loads of different projects when I was there. And I want to talk about next steps for you, and next steps and like kind of tangible tips about what to do next, and particularly in this climate, things to kind of be aware of. So first off, just a little bit about me. I studied English literature and creative writing at university. While I was in my final year of university, I struggled quite a bit with my mental health. And one of my really close friends, Alex, suggested that I do a 9-month training program called Team V. So I did Team V, which was run by V Inspired. After I completed Team V, I was awarded a scholarship for personal development, which I used to become a certified NLP practitioner. NLP, for anyone that doesn't know, is neuro-linguistic programming. It's a tool that's quite commonly used in like life coaching and things like that. But it's about using language to bring about changes in behavior, basically. So it's quite cool, and we are going to be doing a little bit of that today, tiny bit. Then I worked in another charity in the city. I then went off to do my master's in creative writing. And then I worked at another charity called Go Think Big, which was brilliant because at V Inspired and doing Team V, I was able to run my own social action projects. But with Go Think Big, I was able to help other people run their projects, which was just amazing to see. I left every day feeling super inspired. And finally, where I'm at now is I work for a higher education institution in the digital learning team, which has been really good. So just kind of honing all my digital skills as well. And I film and edit YouTube videos in my spare time. So just kind of starting off with my own experience with social action, while I was doing Team V with V Inspire, just a quick explanation for what Team V was, just to kind of make that clear. Team V was a kind of structured social action program where 130 young people were recruited, and the campaigns were kind of set. So you were given a campaign and you had to run that in your local area, recruit volunteers and things like that. As it stands, there is no kind of current Team V happening, but I really do hope that somebody goes and runs it again, because it was brilliant. So with Team V, I had to run 3 campaigns. The first was about sustainability. The second was about building debate around healthy relationships, and the last one was about kind of encouraging positive kind of views around migration and getting rid of stereotypes that kind of a lot of the time revolve around migration. So during that time, I secured some local press. That was one of the targets that we had to do. So for my first campaign, which was about sustainability, I called it Be a Teenage Dirtbag, because it was my favorite song, it still is. And it was all about building sustainable art out of rubbish. So just kind of encouraging, it was all about building the next sustainable generation. So rather than a focus on recycling, it was a focus on upcycling and sustainability, and kind of reusing things in a creative way and encouraging that mindset. So that was really, really cool. I've got my volunteers around me. The second picture on the right is the second campaign, which was about healthy relationships. So we had to kind of, create an event that would encourage people to start talking about healthy relationships. So my one was called Love is Lyrics, and it was all about, what popular songs said about love, and encouraging people to, debate around it. Is this healthy? Is it not? Is it not healthy? And things like that. So it was really cool. Completely changed my life. Social action, I think one of the benefits of social action that isn't really talked about is how much it can actually help your mental health, and actually, just make you feel a bit more positive about life in general. So after that, I kind of stayed with it. As you can see, I can't really let it go. So I volunteer when I can, and I run workshops with a couple of different charities, including with Divergent Thinking. So before we kind of delve into what we're going to talk about next, which is social action, we know the root of social action is injustice. But before that, can anyone tell me what we need to start with? So as well as a kind of awareness of injustices, what is something else that we need? It's quite an obvious one, and there's no wrong answers for this, but I'm kind of looking for one specific thing. What do we need to start off with? Just pop it into the chat. What do you think we need, as well as seeing that there is some injustice in the world that needs to be changed? Voice, brilliant. Hey, passion, really good. Yeah, brilliant. All of these are absolutely correct. Anything else? Anyone else want to add anything? Confidence, yes, definitely. Edwina, yeah, people who care and want to do something about the situation. The need to influence change, I love that. Community power, yes, all of these, exactly right. Brilliant. And the thing that I want, and we're going to talk about all of these today, by the way, so none of these are wrong. Having experienced the injustice, really good. Umar, really good. Knowledge of subject and surrounding. Passion, yes, all of these, brilliant. And correct. And the thing I want to focus on for this next part is mindset. So what kind of mindset do we need as we're kind of going into building our social action campaign and actually running it in our local areas? And I think confidence is a huge, huge one. And I want to kind of build on that. Ironically, I didn't have the confidence to say confidence. We've all been there, definitely, completely understand what you mean. So what I want to kind of start on is something that I learned with NLP. So it's called NLP Presuppositions. So presuppositions are basically overarching beliefs that underpin NLP, and you kind of need them to start off. And there are 16 in total, and I've just got these ones here because these are my favorite ones, and I think they're quite useful. So the first one is, there's no such thing as bad people, only bad behavior. And I think the reason this is important is because it's so easy to, label people who are complicit in injustice as bad people. And that's fine. If you want to do that, that's absolutely fine. I'm not going to tell you that they're not. But actually having that belief that it's bad behavior and not bad people, we can change behavior. We can't necessarily change people. So if we change that behavior, we can keep that person and they can help us on this kind of journey of change. So no such thing as bad people, only bad behavior. The second one is there's no such thing as failure, only feedback. So this one, I heard about it when I did NLP, and there was this guy, this writer, Junior, who was speaking about it and at an event that I went to. And he used it in terms of his driving tests. So I think he failed about 3 times or 4 times. And failing your driving test, for anyone who's been there, is horrible. It's such a horrible experience. You feel terrible and you just don't want to carry on. And you're thinking, I've got to spend this money. I've got to have more lessons. I've got to, do all this other stuff. I've got to make sure my theory doesn't run out. And all of these thoughts are in your head so much that the power of a thought is incredible. The power of a thought can actually stop us from doing something. And a lot of the time, it's not the fact that we're scared to try, it's the fact that we're scared to fail. And that's why we don't jump onto something and, see it through to the end. So he was using this example of failing his driving tests as a way of saying, there is no failure, only feedback, because every time he failed, it would be something he failed on. So it could be roundabouts, parallel parking, turning the road, which I don't think they include that anymore, but I might be wrong. And, other things like that, giving way, being hesitant, all of that kind of stuff that makes you fail. And he took it on board. Every single thing that the driving instructor would say, he would take it on board. He would practice and practice and practice until he no longer failed on that thing. And what it all did at the end of it was make him a better driver. And he didn't see, obviously, it's super expensive to learn how to drive, but he saw that as investing in being a really good driver. So rather than letting those failures kind of get into his head and stop him, he thought, okay, it's going to make me a better driver. And that's all it's going to do. It's going to make me a better driver. And it did. He's a brilliant driver. And, when he passed, he got, I think it's something like no minors at all. Like, it was a perfect test. So that mindset is super, super important. And we are going to come back to that one. The last two are, again, I really like these two, and they're kind of interchangeable. But the first one is, we have all the resources we need to succeed, and we are always where we need to be. So we have all the resources we need to succeed. Sometimes we don't. Okay, so sometimes we actually don't. Sometimes we don't have privilege. We might not have a private school education. But when it comes to a social action project, 10 times out of 10, 100% of the time, this is going to be correct. We do have all the resources we need to succeed. And thinking that way is key as well, because if we think, I don't have the network, I don't have budget, I don't have this, again, it stops us. So having the mindset of, we have all the resources we need to succeed. We have things that we can tap into to get to where we need to be. And a really good example of this is, I was actually on my way to my NLP course, and it was a Sunday. I had to travel from Sutton to Brighton, a Sunday of all days. It was really not great. And on the first day, the facilitator was saying, don't be late. If you're late, you'll miss things. And I was thinking, okay, somebody has invested in me to be able to do this training. If I don't turn up, I'm not going to get as much out of it. So that was in my head. So I woke up early, I was getting ready, and I looked at the times, and I was just like, I'm never going to make it on time. I'm never going to be there for 9. So I got my dad to drop me to the station. I called up my facilitator when I was at the station. I was like, look, I'm not going to be there. And he was like, don't worry, it's fine. Don't panic. Just get here when you can. And then I had to get on a bus. It was a rail replacement bus. I had to, jump in a taxi, ran there, ended up getting there 20 minutes early. And I came into the door, and the facilitator was just like, I thought you were going to be late. Why are you not late? And then it was super cheesy, but another person was like, I guess we have all the resources we need to succeed. And, it just kind of made me think, actually, I was super, super worried, but I did manage to get there. It wasn't impossible. And sometimes we paint things as impossible, and we're never going to be able to change it. And that's the thing that we need to overcome. And we are always where we need to be. And I think this is especially true when we've dealt with injustices, either firsthand or we've seen it happen. And that is what kind of gives us the passion of why we're doing it. So one of my really close friends, Ed, who I'll speak about later, he runs something called Empathy Week, which is all about encouraging awareness around homelessness. And we are always where that's his mantra. That's literally how he thinks. When you walk past, for him, it's when he walks past the homeless person and thinks, what can I do to help? He has walked past them for a reason. And it kind of instills that need in us, that we want to change something. And actually dealing with that injustice can be the kind of powerhouse for change sometimes, and actually what makes us want to change. So these are the NLP presuppositions. I'm not going to pretend that, you're going to listen to these and be like, yep, fine, done that. It takes time. It takes a lot of time. But they are really, really useful when it comes to just kind of reframing something really subtly and, helping us get out of our own head a little bit. The next thing I want to do is I wanted to start off with something a bit positive, because we are going to be talking about things that are, obviously not great. So can you give me examples in the chat of types of injustices that we see, just in the chat? Sexism, brilliant. Environmental injustice, homelessness, racism, patriarchy, misogyny, racism. 1% pay increase for nurses, brilliant. Poverty, ableism, yes, brilliant. So there is no shortage of injustice in the world. There is absolutely no shortage. We see them every single day. We see multiple things every day. Sometimes we can see multiple injustices in just one action. Homophobia and transphobia, brilliant. Employment-related injustice, really good. So this is not an exhaustive list by any means. It's just how much I could fit onto the page. Discrimination, racism, poverty, homophobia, transphobia, corporate fraud, ever-increasing gap between the rich and the poor, classism, domestic abuse and violence, and countless others. So there are so many types of injustices that we see. And I think the thing that is the worst thing about injustice is, well, there's a couple of things. They've been around since the beginning of time. They've always been there. And the other thing is that we are conditioned to believe that these things happen as one-off instances. We're conditioned to believe that if we don't deal with these things, that they're not a problem as well. But actually, they are systemic injustices, which means that not only do they happen every single day, they are literally, the structures crucial to our daily lives are built around these injustices. So everything that we depend on for order and for justice have these inherently kind of, built into them. So what I kind of want to present to you is something that it's not from a textbook or anything. It's something that I just kind of put together to just demonstrate this. But we have, I call this the circle of oppression. So we have the systemic injustice. This leads to kind of two things: low mental health and apathy. Low mental health because it makes us feel terrible. I use mental health as in the way that everybody has mental health, and I think it's a term that should be normalized. You don't only have mental health if you have a mental which can lead to what this then leads to is a lack of action, inevitably. So we've got the systemic injustice leading to a lack of action, but then that lack of action then, encourages this to continue on. Now, I'm not saying that the people that deal with systemic injustice are implicit in it. I'm saying the opposite. I'm saying that the way that these injustices are built, the way these systemic injustices are built, they are built to do exactly this. They are designed so that action is not done. They are designed so that people kind of stay down in that way. And what we hear a lot of the time from people who deal with injustices is, accept what you can't change, get over it. This is how things are, grin and bear it. And I've heard these kinds of things from people dealing with these things every day. This is normal. This is what people say when they have been so downtrodden and beat down that they feel that there's nothing else that they can do. So what I kind of want to put to you now is, because these systemic injustices are so ingrained to what we consider as order and justice, that means we can't expect the change to come from the most efficient way, which is from the top down, which means we have to go through change another way, which is grassroots change. So can anyone tell me what grassroots change is? You can put it into the chat, or, I'm sure everyone's kind of heard the phrase before. If you haven't heard the phrase, give it a guess. Starting from the ground up, brilliant. Yeah, brilliant. Anyone, please continue adding to that. But yeah, exactly, starting from the ground up. Change from normal people and citizens, yep, change that comes from everybody, the average person, change from the bottom of the hierarchy, local community doing the work. Yes, brilliant. This is exactly what it is. So the definition is a grassroots movement is one that uses the people in a given community as the basis for political or economic movement. So grassroots organizations and movements use collective action from the local level to affect change at a local, regional, national, international level. So it's all about that, that work happening from the bottom up, which means obviously it will take a lot longer. However, it comes from the local community doing that work. It builds on the collective power of communities. Brilliant. And what I want to say to you is, even though it will take longer, I want to think of the idea of power. When we think of the idea of power, there are two different types of power. We have dominant and relational power. Dominant power is the power you have over somebody. Relational power is the power that we build within our networks. And relational power will always be more powerful than dominant power. The relationship that we build with each other will always be more powerful than the power that somebody has over somebody else. So building this, so networking, campaigning, all of this kind of stuff, they're all examples of relational power. Now, it's hard to kind of talk about change without talking about everything that 2020 kind of brought us. So without, kind of dwelling too much on the pandemic, specifically, a lot of people have been faced with things like isolation. So being completely isolated from their communities. And we've been, quite far away from people, but in this way, we've seen more than ever the importance of community and the importance of connection. In a book called Games People Play by Eric Berne, he actually said that solitary confinement is one of the punishments dreaded even by prisoners hardened to police brutality. So what that means is even people who have been tortured by people in a position of authority, even for them, confinement is one of the worst punishments. And I'm not saying that lockdown is, the same as solitary confinement by any means, but there are similar strands that run through it, and one of those strands being isolation. And I'm not just talking about the elderly. I'm talking about, young people that felt that, that were kind of riddled with anxiety, that didn't want to go out because for fear of, hurting other people. I think there's a lot of people that are in that kind of boat, or people that wanted to go on marches but felt, so conflicted. And I know so many people that wanted to go on marches but felt that they couldn't, and others that wanted to go because they felt it was more important. But either way, it was a really, really tough decision, super tough decision. And it's not a clear-cut answer at all. And what I want to focus on is what Berne kind of goes on to say. And he says that the best of known weapons against political compliance is social organization. Now, marches, Reddit uprisings, petitions in abundance of all kinds, all of these are ways of creating change, but they're not necessarily social action. They are more so social organization. They're trying to address the core root, the way that we would usually do it. Now, there isn't a problem necessarily with marches and petitions. However, and they do alert people to the fact that something is really wrong. But what happens with marches and petitions is that something has to be really, really, really bad before they happen. The situation has to be really, really dire before stuff like this happens. Now, social action is different to that. It's the step that kind of comes before social organization. Can anyone tell me what social action kind of means to them? So Dominique has said confinement can also relate to invisible illness that we have to hide. Yeah, brilliant. Definitely. There's such a stigma around invisible disabilities and invisible illnesses. Really, really good point. Anyone want to give a definition of what social action kind of means to them? Please do pop it into the chat if you we have a hand up.
Hi.
Hi.
I think to me it's like a tangible change, like something that like, it doesn't have to be huge, but just something that makes a difference towards the cause that you want to change something within.
Brilliant, brilliant, really, really good point. So something that tackles that cause, something that makes an impact in some way. Really, really good point. Thank you so much, Elise. Giving a voice to those in the community that don't have one. Really, really good point, Chloe. Love that. Social action is taking ownership of the problems in your community. Taking ownership. I like that. Thanks, Nat. Social action to me is changing from theory to practice. Really, really, I've never heard it in that way before, and I really like that, changing from theory to practice. We can talk about making change, but actually getting out there and making a difference is something different, and doing something and supporting the community. Really good point. The act of standing up for those who experience injustice, whether I've experienced it firsthand or not. Yes, definitely, Lola. Really good point. Social action is when passion and drive for change comes to fruition by gathering support, helping everyone. Really, really good, Naki. Thank you. Thank you so much for those. And I like to kind of ask people what it means to them, because I think social action, if you get it, you get it. And giving your own, it means different things to different people slightly, but it's collective power. It's about coming together at a local level to instigate change in some way. And social action requires, I would say, two things. The first one is for you to have seen some kind of injustice. Now, not necessarily experienced it yourself, just seen it. Obviously, experiencing it sometimes gives you a bit more of an impetus, but I know people in abundance. I know people from all across the board who have never actually dealt with it, but think, no, I want to do something about it. An example, again, one of my friends, Ed, who really kind of encourages awareness around homelessness and the attitudes to homelessness as well, and kind of bringing together change. A young person, Maddie, who is from a very privileged background. She's white, but she talks about the effects of colonialism as well. So it's not something that she's dealt with firsthand, but she feels, no, I want to kind of say something. I want to kind of instigate change in some way. We've got another another definition. It means to help the people who are experiencing injustice and changing society for good. Yep, definitely. Taking practical action in the service of others. Really like that. Love that. Seeing issues around you and utilizing your skills and abilities. Very good. Thank you, Ifra. Thank you. You've literally led me on to my next point. Using your skills and abilities to take action. And that is the other thing that a social action campaign or project requires. It requires you to have seen the injustice or be aware that it's happening, but also it requires you. So it's about harnessing the creativity that you as an individual has. And everybody here, everybody that showed up today, everybody that has seen some kind of injustice has something that they can give. They have something that they can kind of put towards good use. So you don't need to be super loaded. You don't need to be privileged. In fact, social action projects that have really taken off that I've seen have usually been started off by people who have been marginalized by society and who have experienced that oppression firsthand, because more than ever, they've seen why things have to change. So definitely your experience is an asset when it comes to social action projects, because whatever your experience is, it's going to help you in some way. Now, social action isn't the only way to create change. I want to say that kind of off the bat. It isn't the only way to make people take notice. But when it's done right, it brings people together in a way that they haven't been brought together before. It really hones in on the power of community and the power of seeing this kind of tangible change. And the key to social action as well is it's about being proactive rather than reactive. Now, obviously, it is reactive to an extent because we are reacting to an injustice, but it's about taking this kind of proactive step, using creativity, using your skills, using community, using teamwork to be able to kind of sometimes even shed a positive light on something. It doesn't always have to be positive in that way, but you know, it could be. And a lot of the time, social action projects are fun. They make you feel good. So how does it work? What I would say is the way that you start off with it is it's all about small differences that can kind of ripple and make a bigger difference. So you would identify kind of one aspect of the injustice and the way in which this injustice impacts someone's daily life. Because obviously we can't tackle sexism and ableism overnight. I wish we could. But it's about kind of honing in on specifics. So what do you want to change and be specific? Could be representation in the media. It could be, the way in which corporates do, the way in which corporates tackle environmental issues. It could be something, I mean, I don't think that's a small issue, but it's something a bit more specific. And how do you want to change it? So how are you going to change it? What do you want to change? How do you want to change it? So the next thing I want to go through is the tree metaphor. Now, I actually stole this from The Inspired, but I don't think they'll mind. I'm sure they will be happy that I've done this. And I've used it with other charities that I've worked with as well. So basically, the tree is the social action project. So you have the roots, which is the injustice. Now, this just goes to show how pervasive injustices can actually be across society. They affect every single faction of society. It's not just one thing. Sexism doesn't just affect one element of society. It affects absolutely everything. Ableism doesn't affect one section of society. It affects everything. Equality needs to happen across the board, and that's why. And again, these injustices, if we think of injustices as ingrained into everything. Now, the trunk is your idea, the thing that you want to do. The branches are basically just individual kind of actions that you have, or kind of steps of your campaign. The leaves are additional resources, and the fruit is the impact. And I would say, when you are thinking about your project and when you're planning it, think about how you are going to measure impact. It doesn't have to be something that's it doesn't have to necessarily be something that you're going to, like a report or something, but it can be however you want to do it and however you want to showcase it. And you can showcase it creatively. You can showcase it in a video, in a podcast, in a kind of fly on the wall documentary. It can be however you want to do it. The other thing is, what I would say as well is incorporate a digital element. Now, this has been more important than ever last year and the beginning of this year, because given the pandemic and also accessibility issues as well, having an online element is more important than ever. Can anybody just into the chat, how can we make something digital? How can we digitize something? How can we, or even add an online element to something? Just some examples into the chat. So Amar has said, I didn't want to create a community when I was 12 to 13 years old. That's brilliant, Amar. Really, really good. I wish everyone could do stuff like that when they were 12 and 13. Social media, Zoom meetings, brilliant. Yeah, really, really effective ways to digitize something. Record and film. Thank you, Nat. Creating an online support group. I really like that. Really, really good idea. Brilliant. Hashtag activism. Yeah, definitely. Podcast, forums, workshops. That can be done online, not just using PowerPoints, but recording discussions. Yes, definitely. Really, really good idea. So when it comes to digital, what I would say is as well is, I mean, I work in a digital team at university, and there's something called the SAMR model, which is simulation, augmentation, modification, and redefinition. And what that basically means is, at the kind of core level, simulation basically means we can copy what we do offline and do it online. And we can do that, and we're doing that right now. But redefinition means using technology, using digital tools to redefine how we are actually going to run something. And that could be doing something like online support groups, podcasts, creating documentaries, all of that kind of stuff that we could not do without digital tools. So I would definitely encourage you to be creative with the technology you use. So as well as using social media, as well as doing kind of just workshops online, think about what you can do to go the extra mile, because I think it's definitely something that I think is a way that we need to be thinking more than ever, especially now. And you can kind of mix and match. You can have an offline campaign but with an online element, especially when we start to kind of ease into what's normal. Hopefully we can have that offline element as well, or you can make it completely online. So an example of that is Sutton Council, where I live. What they've done recently is they've done some online, so they've got some local business owners to do very short videos just based on how they've adapted during the pandemic. And this was during the kind of tier, so we were in tier 4, and it was all about what that meant and how they were adapting to the tiers and just overall, stay safe, we're in this together, all that kind of stuff. And that was a way, that was kind of, it wasn't really grassroots because it was organised by the council, but it was a way of kind of bringing the community together in a way that was completely digital. So I thought that was a really good idea. What I want to talk about next is a couple of examples that I've seen, and these are all branded with Go Think Big, because Go Think Big is where I saw a lot of, where I saw a lot of change, and also I created these, so I'm sure they wouldn't mind if I use them. So what I asked all of them was, how was your social action project benefits the community? This is Erin. She did a project around body confidence, and it was all about, and I really liked her idea because it was all about helping young people to focus on what bodies can do rather than not based on on how we look when we do something. And they did things like raise awareness through workshops and open discussions, so really kind of getting to the root of why people think that way. We've got another really good idea on how to mix in with digital. Large scale quizzes that raise questions in people's minds. Love that. Poetry and art being shared online and encouraging creative writing. Love that. That definitely speaks to me. And sharing to help people understand each other's situations. I think sometimes people who aren't personally experiencing the issue can make a difference, but powerful nonetheless, stand from a potential peer perspective with change makers. If someone can have empathy from outside the situation, they can show other external parties can too, and so make others accountable. Definitely be an ally. Definitely be an ally. Yeah, 100% agree with that. And it could. We did so many events at Go Think Big. I definitely think you were involved in some way. You might have even run a project with them or attended an event. But yeah, we used to do events all the time. It was great. The next one is I shouldn't say this, but one of my favorites, which was TITO, which stands for Talent In, Talent Out, run by Michael and Afosa. So Afosa was actually trying to find jobs after uni and just found it really, really, really difficult, as it just is. So what they did was they saw a gap and created a student community that acted as a brokerage service between people who were hiring and the students that were looking for work. But also on top of that, it focused on not just getting employment, but also gaining skills. So, it might be creating an app for somebody who needs an app, or, doing freelance work and things like that. And it was, kind of really focused on the kind of gig economy that's super, super popular at the moment. And they're doing, so at that time they had built, and that was not far in time-wise, they built a community of 100 and helped 20 students to work with clients, and it's even bigger now. And they are constantly at the forefront of that change and doing things all the time. Next up we have Max, and I think this is a really great example of social action being something that's fun and bringing people together and celebrating something. I think that can also come into social action as well. And his project, Queer Cabaret Night, aimed to bring together members of the LGBTQ+ community and give them the performance of their lives, which is, it's positive, it's fun, it's, and it's also making a difference. And that's what social action has the power to do. Then we have Raneem, who did a project that focused primarily on kind of professional women. It was called She Made It, and particularly women of colour that were trying to kind of find their way through the professional world and bridging the gap between university and the real world, which so many of us have issues with, which was brilliant, super inspiring young person. Here we have Vidette, and I really like this, and I think this is a good example of that redefinition idea that we were talking about when it comes to creating like stuff using technology. So her project, Dynamics of Single Black Motherhood, was an audiovisual exhibition. So she basically took this community that was dealing with these stigmas and these taboos. She got that and made it into something creative and made it into art, and in so doing encouraging those Black women to actually speak to other Black women, speak to other Black single mothers, and create that community and make that change in that way. Sometimes bringing together a marginalized community is what social action does, in such a beautiful way a lot of the time. So that was super inspiring and just quite different to stuff that I'd seen as well. So what I would say is kind of next steps. So we've spoken about the tree, we've spoken about different types of examples. There are different ways to kind of get started, and the first one would be creativity, so creating things. So this, you could come up with anything. So you can come up, the first thing you might come up with is your name of what you're doing, or a hashtag. You might create your team. You might create what it is your specific cause is going to actually, what it's going to target. Just going back to examples, there was a really, really great a video that actually went viral that was a Team B project. It was called 50 Shades of Melanin, and it was all about Black women and Black women, you know, the way that Black women are kind of brought up and the way that their hair is viewed and all that kind of stuff. And the young person that actually put it together didn't expect it to go viral. Like, she just did it, and it created something and did it really, really well. It was a really well edited, well filmed video with a storyline, with a kind of poem, spoken word poem that was running through it, and it completely went viral and took off. And sometimes that will happen. Sometimes it will just gain traction. But I would say focus on those small ripples of change. Focus on building it from the local level. Remember, that's what grassroots is, that local level, then building up to, you know, international level. It could be. But if you've made that change at that local level, that is the important thing. There is this fixation on going viral. We can't make something go viral. Something that goes viral is organic in the kind of purest sense. It happens without, you know, anyone really having any power over it. So focus on making that change locally, and focus on what that local change is going to look like. So you would, create the name, create the cause. And then your content. So the content really goes hand in hand with that first kind of creation of that name. So it could be you create social media channels, you create a website, you write articles, you might write speeches, you might write a press release, workshops, events, all of that kind of stuff. Create that content. And you know, you might want to have a community around you. You want to have a team around you that does that. The next thing is, what is your community? Who are you trying to help? Who do you want this to target? Who do you want to know about this? Who is it important? Who is it important that you know, these people know about this? Like, these people need to know that I'm doing this project. Target who that is. Target who your demographic is, and make sure you know exactly who it is. And finally, ask yourself if you are making a difference when it comes to change. Ask yourself, what change have you seen? And improve for impact as well. Remember, there is no such thing as failure only feedback. Improve it, increase the impact. A lot of social action projects that I've seen end up becoming social enterprises and end up sustaining themselves, because that's just the nature. When we care about something, we want to continue it, we want to make it sustainable. So that is it from me. I hope I haven't bored you. I'm happy to kind of take any questions for a little bit. If there are any questions, please do pop them into the chat or raise your hand. If not, I can pass it back over to Nat and Zoe. Sorry, Nat, I think you need to unmute yourself.
I hate that every time. Okay, anyway, guys, I was saying, I would love to know if any of you have any questions for Zahrah. Feel free to say them out loud, or if you want to promote any of your own social action projects. It would also be great to know if any of you are currently up to any.
I was just gonna ask a question for like Zahrah. What advice would you give to yourself when you started to like now? What would you like kind of do differently if you were to like go back and do it?
That's a really good question. What would I do differently? I think I would take more chances. I would take advantage of the people of my connections that I had. So I was really, really lucky that I did something like Team B, where I met other young people that were doing the same thing. And I think another thing is just really the people that you meet along the way, keep hold of them, because they are what is going to get you kind of through to the next step. There is so much power in the connections that you make, and I can't even explain how. So the only reason I got into social action was because of a really good friend that I had, and we were super, super similar. And then through that, I've met so many amazing, really, really good friends, and we care about the world, and those friendships are just stronger because of that. And when you're struggling down the line, if you have people like that you can talk to and you understand it, it's so useful. Because I think I'm a person that It's not that I come from a background of people that are just super apathetic, but I think I was kind of raised around, you know, work hard and, you know, earn a lot of money, and that was the kind of ethos that I had growing up, and that was the kind of, you know, environment that I was in. So actually introducing myself to people that that had the same mindset as me, where we want to do good and we want to make change, that was super, super useful. I hope that answers your question and I didn't go off in another direction.
That was perfect. I see. Okay, Chloe, I can see you've got your hand up, so feel free to unmute yourself.
Hi, thank you for that. It was super, super helpful. My question, so my sort of social action comes from a place of passions and personal experiences. But at the minute, I'm sort of I'm finding it difficult to sort of navigate that.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
I'm finding like blocks and things, if you know what I mean. So I just sort of a question vaguely around sort of how you differentiate your social action and personal experiences, but make it personal, but also like not find yourself exhausted with it, if you know what I mean.
Yep, 100%. Really, really good question. And like I said, mental health and social action, it just goes hand in hand a lot of the time. And I would say if you have like your impetus and your you know drive for creating that project might be something, it might be a personal thing that you've dealt with, and it also might be, you know, some kind of trauma. It might be hard to actually talk about. I would say look after yourself. It's like, you know, if you're on a plane, save yourself before you try and save other people. Definitely try and get the help that you need. You know, it's the most important thing. If you are struggling, it's super, super hard to help other people. I do think helping other people can sometimes help you out of it, but definitely seeking the help that you need, and talking to people in the same situation as you. So trying to reach out if you know anybody that kind of is going through something similar. And, you know, it could be, and I think I would encourage people, I'm so encouraging of accessing services that are out there. There are by no means enough out there, but what you can access for you know, for free, like uplift services, all that kind of stuff, because it's important to figure out why it is that you're doing what you're doing, and getting that help that you need. And I would say talk to yourself like you would talk to your best friend. If your best friend was going through this, what would you advise them to do? And definitely take time to take care of yourself, and, you know, and look after yourself. Like you're important, and you know, you want to create change in the world, and we need people like you. So definitely take care of yourself and seek the help that you need.
No, thanks. Well, that was really great, and I can see there's some networking in the chat already happening. We got one more hand up. Zadok, sorry, I know I keep pronouncing it wrong, but do you want to let us know?
Yeah. So how do you deal with sort of having too many ideas and projects at once? And also, where can I find your YouTube channel? That's 2 questions.
I'm happy to put my YouTube channel into the chat. But I would say I'm exactly like you, Zadok. I really have that problem where I have so many ideas, literally bursting with ideas, but actually following through. And that is definitely one of my issues. I think sometimes I'm really good at starting something, but follow through is just super, super hard for me. So what I would say is, and this is the example that I actually got from creative writing. It's like when you write a novel, and somebody gives you feedback on it, you kind of let the feedback sit for a day, and then you kind of think, okay, what can I get rid of? So what I would say is write down all your ideas. Literally make a list of every single idea that you have, and just, you know, give yourself a little bit of time to put all of it down, and then have a sleep, like, you know, sleep on it, think about it, and think about the ones that you keep coming back to in your head. If you were to cross them off, how would it make you feel? Would you feel down that you've let that idea go? What is it and I think also which idea ticks all of the things that you want to get out of it as well. I remember when I was trying to come up with an idea, and I was thinking, I want to incorporate writing, I want to incorporate mental health, I want to incorporate communities of color, and those things. And I was like, okay, these are the things I want to hit. What is something that kind of, you know, caters for all of these things at once? So I would say think of the causes that you actually want to that you actually want to kind of help, and maybe the overlap between causes, because it might not just be one injustice, and think about the things that you enjoy and try and have an idea that incorporates all of it. But then when sometimes you need to edit it yourself, and sometimes pass it on to somebody you trust. Put it out there, on, on a social media site, and think, okay, would other people be interested in this? Is this a good idea, or am I trying to do too much at once? I think definitely trying to seek constructive criticism is a really good one to do, but also being honest with yourself and thinking, okay, which applies to me the most. I hope that helps.
Yeah, that does.
We've got so many great questions here. So I've got a user.
Hi, my name's Rihanna. Sorry, I've looked.
Oh, Rihanna, no worries. Yeah, what's your question?
So with things like, in your community that you want to, I don't know, petition for, or things that you believe in, you always have people that are opposed to that, I suppose. So how do you deal with that kind of the negative side of it? You believe in something, but they don't, not to sort of take that on board to give you the confidence to keep going,
That's a really, really good example. Yeah, I think every time you want to make change, every time you want to do something good, there are like people in abundance that are like, no, I don't want to do that. I think that is the quite nice thing about social action, is that because it's something like, so you have petitions, which are a more kind of social organization and kind of getting people together. But with social action, it will be something that requires a little bit more from people. So it might be attending a workshop. It might be, writing something. It might be taking part in some kind of campaign. Because you have that action, and I would say a lot of people, if they like, for example, today we have, everybody here today is here because they want to be. There are probably people that don't agree with social action, people that don't agree with making change. But the minute you put in something like an action and you get people to get involved, a lot of people, don't bother. A lot of people are happy to kind of spout things and spout vitriol, on posts and things like that. But at events and at workshops, it's a lot less likely, because there's a bit more accountability as well, and there's other people there that will kind of change that. And I think, again, going back to relational power and thinking about the power that we have together, if you build that team, build that community, it almost kind of, I'm not going to say shields you from it, but it's like when you have a problem, it's like, and you share it with somebody, they say a problem shared is a problem halved. You have a community to talk about it with. You have a community that will combat, that will be able to kind of combat that problem, and it gets to you a lot less. So I would say definitely think about the actions that you want people to take, and think about the community that you are going to surround yourself with, because that team and that community that you kind of grow, it might be 2 people, it might be, it might be a handful of people, but it will literally be everything when it comes to delivering what it is you want to deliver. I hope that helps.
That's great, thank you.
No problem.
Perfect. And I think we've probably got time for one more. And Jade, I thought yours relates to the last one quite well, so I don't know if you're able to say it out loud.
That's a good question. Which one is that? I actually did 2 questions.
Sorry, I mean, whatever one you think, but I thought the one about families and relationships was quite interesting.
Yeah. So it's just saying, how do you handle issues where you've got family members strongly disagreeing with the issue you're handling, and how do you tackle that without causing a family feud? I've got one particular image in my head where I actually ended up with a bit of a cat fight between my grandma and my great auntie, and they both forgot they're quite elderly ladies and need to not shove each other around over opinions on things. And that's all because I brought up something that was close to my heart. So how do you do that without having elderly ladies at risk of hitting each other?
That's a really good question. I think it's tough. It's really, really tough. It's really hard to go against family members that think a certain way. I'm quite lucky in the sense that I have, overall my family's quite supportive, but within that there are just nuances in the way that we approach things that's very, very different. Like, for example, my family, if I say white privilege, they think I'm being racist, and they think microaggressions and things that people of color deal with, it's different to the racism they experienced, and therefore it's very hard for them to understand. But I would go back to, there's no such thing as bad people, only bad behavior. I think, and I believe, and maybe I sometimes I think I'm a bit too optimistic, but I think people can change, and I think it takes time, and I think it can be slow. But I would say, again, I can't express how much it's important to take care of yourself, and make sure you have a support network that you need, especially if it's tough for you to deal with, and also make sure that you have people around you and your community and your team members that understand kind of what you're going through, and that you can kind of go to them to vent about things, and to get advice from. Sometimes broaching a topic, if you are feeling drained and you broach it and you don't have the energy to do it, sometimes it can just catapult you to a downward spiral. So I would say just make sure you are taking care of yourself, and you are able to kind of broach it, and that you have the support network that you need. And sometimes it's a very kind of subtle, we can't change everybody, unfortunately, but we can chip away at ideals that kind of don't make sense or that are unhealthy. But I think we're in this kind of midst of everybody holds on to their thoughts and ideals very, very staunchly, and it's really hard to kind of tap into that, especially when, I think it was something I was reading the other day, that it was like it takes 6 months on Facebook to become radicalized in any way, which is bizarre, and it's quite scary. But it's just it's that kind of, we tend to look at things on social media that feed our own so sometimes problematic thoughts as well. So it's all about making people become more and more polar. So I would say if it's family, if it's not family or not friends, try not to interact, especially if it's going to put you down. But when it's family, I would say try and bridge the gap with similarities, and we are, it's really so cliche, and I hate saying it, but we are stronger together. Sorry, I can't say that. I think definitely kind of trying to bridge that gap and trying to get there. Like, I had members of my family that are migrants themselves, but they don't like other migrants. And I was like, well, but why? But you are, you yourself are, you went through that yourself. But getting angry and getting angry at them only encourages them to be defensive. And sometimes it's about understanding where they come from and where those thoughts and ideals are coming from. And so, a lot of the time it's a place of hurt. Hurt people. And I'm not saying that you need to become, I'm not saying you need to psychoanalyze them. You might not have the strength to do that. But yeah, I think it's definitely about taking time to understand where they're coming from, and the fact that a lot of the time people don't say things because of you, they say things because of themselves. And problematic views come from somewhere very deep down, and from a need in themselves that hasn't been fulfilled. So yeah, I would say try and, if you can, try and get to that, but otherwise, but more than ever, take care of yourself, look after yourself, and do what you need to do. I hope that helps.
Thank you.
That was some very wise words there, very wise beyond your years. And I definitely like some of the cliches, as in we have more in common than which divides us.
I like that.
Just before we end quickly though, next week we've got Zahrah, who is doing a session of networking across borders. Zahrah is an incredible woman. She's an Iraqi, and after ISIS collapsed, Iraq was in ruins. She created a social action project which bridged the gap between Iraq's youth and British youth. And then she brought the two together with a project called Let's Be Friends, where she started creating, pen pals, creating t-shirts which each others would wear, video diaries. It was bridging a gap of a horrible war that has happened, with young Brits kind of thinking that Iraq is bad and Iraqis having this negative view of the West, and kind of doing some healing. So I really recommend, if any of you can attend it, same time next week. It'd be fantastic to have you. Oh, we also have some others coming up as well. I would love it if the remainder, if you can go on video for the last few seconds if you can, and a massive round of applause to Zahrah for being an absolute fantastic today. I've thoroughly enjoyed it, and I hope you have. So yeah, super cheesy. All right. Well, thank you so much all for attending. Hopefully we can see you at some more. It's been great having you. And once again, thank you, Zahrah.
Thank you.